Hey guys, we're here today. We're going to talk about the Atlantic Division. I'm going to run this down for you real quick. Starting with the New Jersey Devils, we'll get right into the staples. First off, you got to remember the monsters on the left-hand side in New Jersey. Zach Parise proved last year that he's not a one-hit wonder. This guy will give you stats in every single category and is a monster on the left wing. Do not let him pass in the first round. Second guy is Ilya Kovalchuk. Now, who would have thought that this guy would come to New Jersey and fit right in without missing a beat? He continued his dominance in tearing up the fantasy world and finally solved that plus-minus plague that's been following him around the league. The third guy is going to be Martin Brodeur. This guy is just confusing the masses with his ridiculous numbers. Will he regress this year? Consider this. His off year in 2008-2009, in which he played only 31 games, he won 19 of those games with a 242 goals against average and a 916 save percentage. On top of that, 5 shutouts. This guy has people passing on him constantly because they're afraid of what he's going to do this year, and this might be the year that he falls off. I say when few people pass on him, they get hesitant, they get scared. He drops to the middle or the bottom of the second round, jump all over him, kick your feet up, and just smile the rest of the way to the end of the league. Personally, I would try to avoid the entire second line in New Jersey. They're all aging veterans. You got guys like Eliash, who can be close to about a point a game, but really has been on the decline and is going to gain no benefit this year from playing with Jason Arnott. Another guy to watch out for is going to be Jamie Langenbrunner. This guy as well may get you 60 points, somewhere in that range, but all around you got 8 forwards vying for 6 top forward spots, and out of those, I'm guessing it's going to be the aging veterans, the guys that are slowing down a little bit. They're going to be really in a timeshare for second to third line minutes. Last thing I'm going to worry about, I'm going to watch out for this year is going to be New Jersey defensemen. They're pretty much a lock to give you good production in the plus-minus, but that's about it. So you can plug them in as a 4th defenseman, but don't expect too much from them. There's only one player on New Jersey that can be considered in this category of sleepers and steals, and that's the gem named David Clarkson. This guy for 3 years in a row has had a steady increase in point production to last year where he got to near a half point per game. Throw that in with 160 penalty minutes on a shortened season, a good plus-minus, not great, but on the positive side. Throw that in with second line power play duties, and you've got a clone of Scott Hartnell at a crazy steal going undrafted in the majority of leagues. This guy's got a lot of upside, seeing as the majority of his goals are of the sniper variety, hitting top shelf and corners. With the Isles, we're going to start on the back end with Mark Straight in the 6th round. It's a great value there, solid point production and first line power play duties, and he's the glue that holds the Isles power play and their young, talented offense together. This year he's got a new defense partner in the defensive-minded James Wisniewski, and that should solve a lot of problems with him having to worry about playing back. With a year of experience under their belts, the first line of John Tavares, Kyle Okposo, and Matt Molson should be putting up solid contributions, getting close to the 60 to 70 point range, hopefully with a decent plus-minus and tons of power play time. Last year, they proved to be solid up-and-coming players, and I would keep them on your radar. JT is going to be going in about the 3rd or 4th round. Okposo is a guy going in the 12th to 13th round. So really between the two of them, I'm going to pass on the pipe dream of John Tavares being the next Stamkos. I'm going to roll the dice instead on Okposo, who's right-wing eligible and can be had 10 rounds later. There hasn't been too much hype this year around Long Island, so it's really tough to point out who's going to be the biggest risks. I would start out though with the goalies. Now, a lot of guys are going to be taking Dwayne Rolison and Rick DiPietro as sleepers in the late rounds or the last round. I'm going to try and avoid them unless one of them becomes a clear-cut starter. It's just not enough minutes to go around and not a track record of any kind of solid defense in New York. The other thing I'm going to try and avoid, and it's a bit of a contradiction, and I just touched on it during the staples, is John Tavares. This guy's going in the 3rd to 4th round. People are kind of enamored by what happened with Stamkos last year. Difference is Stamkos had guys on his line like Cavalier, St. Louis, he had Steve Downey there also, and I don't think that John Tavares has the same supporting cast. So I'm going to pass on him in the 3rd to 4th round. If he falls to the 6th or 7th, that's where I would slot him in. Now first off, I gotta say, I am completely surprised that Matt Molson has been getting brushed off in early drafts. This guy plays on the first line with John Tavares and Kyle Okposo. Last year put up 48 points, 30 of those points were goals, and a solid plus-minus. Get this number right here. Get this stat in your head. John Tavares, minus 15. Kyle Okposo, minus 22. Matt Molson, minus 1. So summarize this. JT with 24 goals, 54 points, minus 15. Okposo, 19 goals, 52 points, minus 22. Matt Molson, only 6 points less than JT, 30 goals, and a minus 1 overall. How can that not be the best value on the Isles? This guy should be flying off draft boards. There's one big sleeper on the Isles as well, and that's Josh Bailey. This guy didn't put up spectacular numbers last year, 35 goals, around even on the plus minus, but after Christmas, 35 games, guy racked up almost 30 points, 23 to be exact, so not quite, but had an even plus minus, and at his point per game that he averaged on the home stretch of the season would have led his team in scoring. He's penciled in at the third line, but he's only got Franz Nielsen in front of him, and I would not write off the fact that he could become winger eligible before the middle of the season due to the fact that he won only about 40% of his draws last year. He's a real good value. Keep your eye on him. It's this type of acquisition that wins fantasy leagues. Henrik Lundqvist is the only guy I would consider a staple on the Rangers. He's the model of consistency, and this is exactly the type of player I'm talking about when I refer to guaranteed output from a player. He's going in the second round, and it's a great place to take him. Consider this. Since he's come into the league, he's averaged 67.5 games played, 35.5 wins, 2.33 goals against average, 918 save percentage, and 4 shutouts a season. Actually closer to 5 shutouts a season. Another guy I want to touch on is Sean Avery. This instigator turned drama queen is following in the footsteps of legendary tough guy Ty Domi. He hits 30 years old and decides he wants to focus on his finesse game. Now Avery's entire value was a 40-point guy who put up massive penalty minutes, and if he's not willing to turn the ice upside down, he has no place in fantasy hockey. Brandon Dubinsky has toyed with the hearts of fantasy owners for 2 years running. He started off the last 2 seasons going on first-month tears, posting October numbers that equal 22 points in 27 October games over the last 2 seasons. That's a near 70-point pace in the opening month in his age 22 and 23 seasons. He got the whole fantasy world excited, only to have the bubble burst when he leveled out over the rest of the year. He got the physical makeup and the line mates on the first line in New York to be able to blow up this season, and I believe that this is the year he finally continues his pace. Mike Richards and Jeff Carter have put up near identical fantasy impacts over their first 5 seasons in the league. The difference is that Jeff Carter puts up more goals, more shots, and should become winger eligible this year, making him a few spots more valuable than Mike Richards. Also, Chris Pronger can be counted on to do what Chris Pronger does, and that is produce year in and year out. Over the last 3 years, his point production has steadily increased, while his penalty minutes and his overall nonsense has steadily decreased, leading to a better plus-minus and a more reliable player. So if this guy falls into or out of the 5th round, he's a huge bargain. This year I swear to learn my lesson and completely avoid Danny Briere. He's put up a monster 95-point season in Buffalo in the past, followed that up by his first season in Philly, netting 72 points. The only problem with these numbers is that in his entire 12-year career, those are the only 2 times he's surpassed 65 points. The other avoidable that won't get any brotherly love from me in the land of cheesesteaks is Michael Leighton. Goalies get hot and cold every season, and I've been burned by far too many Philadelphia bargain bin goalies in the past. I'll wait a month or 2 and grab this year's version of Michael Leighton, which will no doubtly emerge before Christmas. The 9th and 10th round is not quite a steal for a guy like Scott Hartnell, but has huge upside at that pick. He's a guy who you need on your team if you're going to dominate your league by putting up stats in every category, and if you pair him up with a hard-hitting defenseman, a guy like Pronger or a guy like Chara, you won't have to waste a roster spot on a goon that puts up only penalty minutes. This year he's got a lot of upside as well, playing on the first line with Richards and Carter. 60 points is not out of the realm of possibility. However, if you're in a league that doesn't have penalty minutes, he's significantly going to drop on my draft board, but not off my radar. Marc-Andre Fleury looked destined last year to enter the elite at his position. However, this year has started off being drafted outside the top 10 goalies. It may seem like a great bargain, but consider this. The last 3 seasons, Fleury has had a steady decline in the stat sheet. The most obvious stats being save percentage, where he's dropped from a .921 to a 912 to a 905 over the last 3 seasons. However, I would completely attribute this to the lack of rest and the fatigue factor, and after an early off season like they had after their early exit from the playoffs, I expect them to come back refreshed and be a solid goalie. The same optimism can be had for Evgeny Malkin, who had a drop-off in point production last year, but I would attribute that more to the fact that he had a huge number of missed games. He was on pace last year for 94 points had he not missed so many games due to injury, and I feel this year he's going to be a solid pick. He's going in the middle of the first round, and that's a few spots behind where he should, so keep him on your radar. Third guy obviously is going to be Sidney Crosby. Last season this man was possessed, tearing the league apart, cementing himself in many experts' minds as the true #1 player in the league. That status, however, is influenced by variables, which in fantasy land have no real impact. So for fantasy purposes, he is the #2 player behind Ovechkin due to a plus-minus difference and shot totals, and Ovechkin's proven ability to hit 50 goals. Crosby line mates are a trap. Every year, fantasy aficionados reach for guys they feel are going to be fantasy gold playing on a line with Crosby, and every single year they get burned. This year, seriously watch out for a guy like Chris Kunitz. The Pens line designations are at best 50% applicable when you consider the amount of time that Crosby stays on the ice compared to his line mates. Crosby averaged 22 minutes a game last season, where Kunitz, Dupuis, and Ponikarovsky all averaged between 14 to 16 minutes per game. This can be attributed directly not to a difference in power play time, but to the fact that Crosby is the first guy on the ice and the last guy off every single shift. Now add that up with the fact that there's always every single shift of every single game an overlap of Crosby and Malkin on the ice at the same time. It's too easy for the third wheel on that line to get lost in the mix. With the departure of Sergei Gonchar, the fantasy world has been scrambling looking for that guy who's going to anchor the power play alongside Malkin and Crosby this year in Pittsburgh. A lot of people have been drawn to the youngster Chris Letang and all of the upside that he showed in the past. However, the one guy that's getting overlooked, who I believe is the real steal, is the former Prime Minister of Canada, Paul Martin. All jokes aside, he was a staple on the Devils' blue line, and he's only 29 years old this year. He's put up multiple 30-plus point seasons, with the majority of those points coming on the power play, and I believe in the 12th or 13th round, he's a massive steal with legitimate 50-point upside. The next guy, and this is the prediction you've all been waiting for, is Jordan Staal. Jordan Staal is going to have a massive season as soon as he returns from his foot injury. As long as the plans stay the same, that he's going to be playing second-line duties, centering a line with Evgeny Malkin. I'm talking 30-plus goals, close to 70 points, in probably about 70 games once he's back from his injury. Now, he has missed time in training camp, so take that with a grain of salt. The reality is, there's a very good chance he finishes in 55-60 points if he gets a slow start to the season due to the injury.